Okay. The next one, this one is, I think, is interesting. You know, the town, to maintain all the buildings the town owns, so not the school, all the other things that fall under the town, to be putting 35,000 in maintenance. Now, that current maintenance fund has about 159,000 in it. There's another, I got a report of all the different funds and trust funds. And there's another one with 280 that's titled Municipal Building Construction and Renovation Fund that's got 280 in it. You know, that's 440,000. Throw in the, you know, the 200 or so they're planning on taking from the sale of the trolley barn. That's more than $500,000 in funds for building maintenance in the town. Once again, that'd probably be another good question for somebody to ask at the deliberative meeting. Reevaluation. So every 5 years we have to do a reevaluation assessment, the value of the homes that impacts the town. It costs about $60,000. So what the town decided to do a number of years ago is raise $30,000 last year, $30,000 this year, so that we have the money ready to do it. They could also, if it's every 5th year, put a warrant article that says for the next 5 years, we're going to allocate $12,000, put it in the budget and put it in this fund. It would be a lot more efficient, but maybe they're getting there. Grove Road Land Fund. Remember we talked earlier about that transmissive area, our old dump that sits above our best well. A number of years ago, a former selectman was working for a civil engineering company, and before he became a selectman, worked to convince the state that we didn't need to spend all this money to protect ourselves from the pollutants. His company said would, you know, volunteer and do the analysis of the testing. Well, it turned out a lot of PFOAs were coming out of that. When they tested it, I think there were readings in the high 70s, 80s, and there might have been one over 100 that were tested there. But the question is, do we catch the tail end of a plume? There have been previous plumes. There are going to be more. We only go in there about once a month. You know, who's to say that something, you know, after a big rainstorm can't come in, get leached out, get into the water supply, because the Rye Water only tests once a month. But because we're paying more, we've been putting money into that fund because his firm isn't doing that gratuitous work anymore. All right, the select board, another good question to ask, that they decided they were going to give themselves the ability to sell the parsonage land and the building if the TD Bank swap didn't go through. So they put this on the warrant article. If anyone wasn't paying attention, you know, what happened is that it ended up going to courts. The voters didn't decide what we're going to do. The courts drove a settlement where we paid the owner of the TD Bank $700,000. The library contributed $400,000. They get conservatory rights over that, custodial rights over that land next to them. The Conservation Commission, you know, it's all our money. The library money was donated from somebody, but for the library, they would pay $300,000 of it. They get all the property behind the TD Bank. The select board lent the money to the conservation so that the deal could go through, because they, you know, the conservation's got to get bonds and it takes a while. The select board also had to pay back the cost of the demolition to the owner of the TD Bank that did that work. So, you know, the court settled that, and we paid over $700,000 based on the court settlement. Allows this one is interesting too. So if a builder builds a property and finishes it in April, and everything, the building inspector passes it all up, they have to wait until the next town meeting for the town to incur the cost of plowing and maintaining that road. The builders, one of them in particular, is, you know, said the town, you know, as soon as they're done, it should be able to be at a public hearing meeting and a select board meeting to accept the road, so the town can start to incur the costs. So I can't tell you my opinion on that. Okay. And all right, this one is mute because it amended the wording of the TD swap that went out the window. This one is a petition warrant article that comes from Open Democracy, and yours truly is the one that put it on. And if you don't know about gerrymandering, yes, it's with a hard G. We have it a lot in New Hampshire in the last two redistricting that's happened in 2010. They used an outside firm, came in. Legislators only got less than about 24 hours to look at the maps. And we've got a tremendous amount of gerrymandered districts. And a good example is Hudson Pelham. Hudson's got about 24,000 and always votes one way. Pelham, adjacent to it, has got 15,000, but is more purple. So what they do is they combine Hudson and Pelham into one big district, but because between the Hudson majority and this part of Pelham, it always goes one way. So all those representatives from the 39,000 people all tend to be from one party. And so it's packing in to do that to get a majority. 295 of the 400 representatives are in these multi-member districts, and that's the kind of games they play. So it's just not the district, the executive council district that goes all the way from Peterborough to Portsmouth, where they pack in that belt of Democrats so that the other party has a better chance of winning. So it pretty runs rampant. The legislators put fair redistricting legislation through. The governor signs it. He thinks the people that have been gerrymandering to represent us will continue to do what they've been gerrymandered to vote for. The other part of it is that the state constitution, Part 2, Article 11, says if you have enough population for your own House of Representative district, you should get one. That number is about 3,400. All right, Rye, has over 6,000 voters. Even with the census, we probably would qualify for our own district with 2 reps coming up in the future. We could have that now. But as it is, we share our 2 representatives with Newcastle. And a number of years ago, both of our representatives were from Newcastle. So the Constitution says we should have that. Now, I don't mind sharing with Newcastle, but and it doesn't affect us because, Rye and Newcastle are pretty similar, but there's plenty of communities, especially around the lakes and other things, they're not very similar. They're dissimilar. But that happens quite a bit across the state. So that was me talking. Sell surplus equipment. Okay, that's it for the town. There's at 9 o'clock at the Wentworth by the Country Club is the town delivery meeting where we can change the wording of that. We can't negate any of those warrant articles, but everyone there can do it. At the school board deliberative meeting, if Joe Cummings and I wanted to do things, we could have tried, but all the select board members were residents of the town and they would have outvoted us 5-2. But we were the only 2 people at the meeting besides the principals and people from the SAU. So we'll go into the school budget, the technology expendable trust fund. Go back to what we're talking about with the DPW. They need trucks, firemen need their trucks, their equipment. Schools now need technology. When I was a kid, you had an overhead projector. That's about all you needed. And maybe a film projector. That's not the case anymore. So the schools realize, the technology gets obsolete, needs to be replaced. And we should have a fund, in case they have a catastrophe to do something to keep the technology up and running, just like we have maintenance funds, et cetera. So that's what that one does. The retainage of the general fund. So the schools, when they finish the school year in June and there's any leftover money, they've got no place to hold it. So they got to give it back to the town. There was an agreement with the budget committee years and years ago that the school board wouldn't say, hey, we got a bunch of money, hey, go spend it. They agreed not to do that. They'd work with the budget committee. But then a number of years ago, the state legislature created a mechanism where the school board, if there was a surplus, they could carry over 2.5% of the budget into the next year, and they could have that slush fund for in case of emergencies from surpluses. They've increased that from 2.5% to 5%. So that's that one. The solar panels in Rye Junior High, the school board's in favor of that. I forget, it was like 75% of the energy can be at Rye Elementary and 80 or something like that. The electricity needed at the junior high, I forget the numbers, but it's a lease program to contribute. We tie back to the schools. The education, the kids, they get lots of data back. And then after X amount of years, the school has the ability to buy it, and where they get to even reduce the cost of electricity even more. All right, so that is the warrant article presentation. And it took a lot longer than I thought. I'm going to jump right into the budget presentation, or why don't I just stop real quick? Does anyone have any questions on any of the warrant articles? Everyone's mute.
So Stephen, you said there were some that we can't impact at all and some that we can impact. Is that true, or did I misunderstand?
No, thank you for listening. So all of the ordinances that the planning board puts forth, whether it's building code, zoning, or planning, none of those can be modified at the deliberative session. So all of those amendments at the beginning, there's nothing we can do about them at the deliberative. We can ask questions, but we can't change the wording there.
Okay, and so now I remember now. And there is a planning board meeting between now and July, obviously, right? So people could go there too.
No.
There's not?
No. So once they decide back in December or January that this is what's going to go on the ballot, that's it.
Okay, so it's a yes or no.
Yeah. So because everything had to be done by January. They couldn't extend it because we pushed out the election. The legislative, didn't allow communities to do that.
The time to comment is as they're being discussed, formulated, drafted, which, is months and months ago. Yeah. So
it's in the fall when the Rules and Regulations Subcommittee is meeting, and then they present to the full planning board. All right. Any other questions from our vast and expansive audience? I see somebody in the 8th row. No question. Okay, just kidding. All right, the budget presentation. So here's the first one. And these numbers are from 2019. And we're actually talking about doing a more detailed discussion about how the budget and the money moves, possibly in the fall. But where the tax rate comes from is where the town has their budget, their revenues, your beat stickers, if you didn't, what you pay the building inspector, any fees is revenue to the town. So the town only has to raise, in 2019, $6 million. You throw in what the school needs, what the county, and that's the total that needs to be raised outside the districts, Genesee, Rye Beach, and the Water District, for the tax rates. And then the town can, if they want to help reduce the tax rate, they can apply a balance from the surplus to reduce that tax rate. And what the state says that, that rainy day fund should have between 5 and 17% of your, operating budget, in case of emergencies and to pay things. So as long as you're in that range, you're okay. Anything else above the surplus, you can apply to drive down taxes. So you take that, you subtract the 500, and you get the tax rate. I actually added the 500. So the numbers in red don't match up because I should have subtracted 500. But if something we wanted to spend $2 million, the tax rate would go from $10 to $11. We go up $1. 200,000. It would we're gonna one of the the fire trucks are spending 200,000 or the 200,000. It's going to go up 0.1, and you can figure out your house value divided by 1,000 times the tax rate is what your tax bill is. So the numbers work out. If your house is worth $1 million, you pay a little over $10,000 in taxes. So how does the money flow? So, the tax rate is set in the fall. This year was done in December. And so you're actually November 5th or 6th, I think it was. When you pay your taxes, the budget was approved in last March, but you paid the tax bill for June. Wasn't for that one. The tax rate gets set in the fall, and then the end of that fiscal year is when you pay your first tax bill, and that's the tax rate. And then the following June, it's the second one. So when you paid your tax bill in June, we changed the rate. We had paid anyway. Before it was when you paid in June. Because these are what was set in December, about 10% went to the county. By the way, the county went down. The school tax is about 60%. Those lines are there, the local and state. If you saw one of our old state reps, proudly say you got rid of the donor towns years ago. He didn't.